Welcome to Real Hollywoodland, where we delve into the stars and stories of old Hollywood. Before we get started, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want more old Hollywood related videos. Okay, enough of that, let's dive in. If you have seen any of my previous videos, you'll note that I'm always leery when new biopics come out because it generally is not a genre of film known for its accuracy. In fact, I don't like watching most of them because I know myself that I'm going to end up doing a ton of research to find out how accurate the story was that was portrayed on screen. However, due to its subjects, I was actually eager to watch the newest Billie Holiday biopic on Hulu, The United States vs. Billie Holiday, when it was announced. I knew, or at least hoped, it would be better than Diana Ross's Lady Sings the Blues, which came out in 1972. I know a lot of people like that movie and her performance, I'm just not one of them. The new movie stars singer Andra and is based on the book Chasing the Scream, The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs by Johann Hari. It was an interesting choice to base the movie on that book instead of one of the numerous biographies written about Billie Holiday or even her own autobiography, Lady Sings the Blues. I'm not saying it was the wrong choice, but just an interesting one. Chasing the Scream will be my primary source for this video, if you want to read it yourself. Overall, I felt that the movie was well done, and the events portrayed were pretty accurate for the most part. It could have used a tighter edit and more character development for supporting roles, but Andra gave an amazing performance and she deserves all the accolades that she has received so far and the ones that are to come. I'm making this video before the 2021 Academy Awards, so I know she was nominated for Best Actress, but I don't know if she'll win. I honestly hope that she does. So I'm making this video not as a review, but more of a companion to the movie. This video will give you more backstory on the history of the Bureau of Narcotics, why they chose to target who they chose to target, and how it impacted Billie's life and ultimate death. If you want to know more about Billie Holiday's life in general, and why I'm talking about her on this channel, I made a video about that which I will link in the description if you want to check it out. This is more of a history video than a Hollywood video, and I will talk candidly about race and drugs in the United States. If facing that reality makes you uncomfortable, then you may not want to watch this. However, if that conversation makes you uncomfortable, then you probably do need to watch this. You'll see how, although things are different now than they were then, some things are still very much the same. Here we go. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics was established under the U.S. Treasury Department in 1930. With Harry J. Anslinger as its first commissioner. It was just a perk that he had married the niece of Andrew Mellon, who was Secretary of the Treasury at that time and made the appointment. Under his tenure, the Bureau had accomplishments such as criminalizing marijuana through fear-based tactics, basically killing Billie Holiday, and starting the so-called War on Drugs. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics was basically the old Prohibition Bureau. In the beginning, Anslinger struggled to make his bureau relevant. His tiny bureau was struggling and needed a target. He needed a win to justify his position and the existence of the bureau at all. But his bureau had several issues. One was that he had inherited many of the same corrupt agents from the old Prohibition Bureau. Additionally, drugs like marijuana were still legal, and the Supreme Court had ruled that addicts to harder drugs should be treated by doctors and not by the criminal system. So, drug addiction was treated as a medical issue and not a criminal one. So, from his perspective, that needed to be changed so his bureau could become more relevant. Even though both cocaine and heroin had been outlawed in 1914, there were only a small number of users, so it wasn't enough to keep the bureau going. The bureau needed to find trouble because trouble wasn't finding them. So, why did he target Billie Holiday? Anslinger didn't start with her specifically. He started with jazz overall. Anslinger hated jazz. He hated its unstructured and improvisational nature. He hated how it was a combination of African, Caribbean, and European heritage. He hated this black music. He hated how many jazz musicians smoked marijuana, and he would have loved to see them all behind bars. He even kept a folder labeled Marijuana and Musicians on his desk. By 1937, with the Marijuana Tax Act legislation, possession of marijuana had become illegal in the U.S. In fact, Anslinger played a large role in getting it banned in the first place. He contacted 30 doctors asking their thoughts on marijuana. 29 came back saying that it should not be banned. Anslinger ran with the knowledge that one doctor thought that it should. Anslinger then made an example of a man named Victor Licata. Licata was a 21-year-old Florida man who used an axe to murder his mother, father, and siblings. Anslinger blamed this squarely on the smoking of marijuana. He amplified this message in the media and scared people into thinking that the only right thing to do was to make marijuana illegal. This was just what Anslinger had wanted. He went on a media campaign saying that the use of marijuana would ultimately lead to delirious rage and insanity. He said that it, quote, turns man into a wild beast, end quote. Years later, when Licata's medical files were reviewed, it was noted that psychiatrists had identified that Licata had suffered from acute and chronic insanity, and severe mental illness ran in his family. Those factors were much more likely to be the cause of the rampage. Now, with legal and public opinion pieces in place, jazz musicians would become the target for the Bureau. Anslinger made one significant miscalculation when targeting jazz musicians. He miscalculated the community among them. No one would snitch on each other, and if one was arrested, the others would chip in to bail them out of jail. After many attempts, he realized it would be easier to have a singular target, and Billie Holiday would be that person. She unwittingly gave the perfect bait for Anslinger and his Bureau. Now, in 1939, 9 years after the Bureau was founded, Billie Holiday started singing Strange Fruit, a song about the lynching of black men in America. When people think of the civil rights movement, most people often immediately think of Martin Luther King Jr. and his I Have a Dream speech. However, it can be argued that the civil rights movement truly started when Billie Holiday started singing Strange Fruit. Most musicians were singing about love, and Billie was shedding light on a very important yet uncomfortable issue. It would be the song that would lead to her own demise. Anslinger demanded that she stop singing that song, and when she refused, from then on, she basically had a target on her back. This defiant song gave the agency the perfect justification, in their minds, to bring her down. Not only was she a high-profile drug addict, she was a black, high-profile drug addict who sang jazz music and sang about lynching. Once he had his target, Anslinger needed the right agent to take her down. He knew he had to use a black agent, even though he hated having to hire them. He thought it would be easier for a black agent to move in the jazz club circles than a white one, and he was honestly probably right about that. Jimmy Fletcher got the job and would basically be a street agent who was allowed to carry and deal drugs so that he could gain trust and then get information on who to bust. And he did just that. Billie started noticing Jimmy hanging around the clubs where she performed and the parties that she attended, and he became friendly with Billie and her entourage. In the Hulu movie, the Jimmy character is shown as shooting up with Billie and her band. This part may or may not have been true, as he was quoted as saying, quote, "I never knew a victim. You victimize yourself by becoming a junkie," end quote. Fletcher never forgave himself for what he did to Billie, befriending her, gaining her trust, and then turning her in. As shown in the movie, the conviction caused her to lose her cabaret card, so she could not perform anywhere that served alcohol, which severely limited her ability to earn income and was basically a death sentence. Anslinger's justification for how he treated Billie was that she was a high-profile heroin user and drug addict. While true, the argument would have been stronger if he treated other high-profile drug addicts the same way. According to Chasing the Scream, Anslinger became aware of Judy Garland's drug addiction and treated her very different than Billie. He chatted with Judy on the phone and advised her to take longer vacations between pictures. He even wrote to MGM to tell them that she did not have a drug problem at all. So, the reason for the kindness towards Garland and not Holiday? Well, to put it simply, Judy was white and Billie was black. It's really that simple. Billie was a much easier and acceptable target. And please, don't write me mean comments down in the comment section. I'm a huge Judy fan myself, and I'm absolutely not saying that she should have been targeted by Anslinger and his Bureau. That would be crazy. What I am saying is that neither of them should have been targeted and instead should have both been given the help they actually needed. However, Anslinger would use targeting Black Americans as his strategy to grow his department, budget, and jurisdiction. Like other American leaders, and even like leaders that we have today, he used white beer to sell his narrative. It was easier to sell the narrative to white America that the anger in the Black community that started to brew was due to increased drug use and not the inhumane treatment that most Black people were experiencing at that time. Therefore, the criminal prosecution was required to save the country. Billie's tragic death was shown in the movie, but it was even worse than what was shown. In 1959, Billie collapsed at a friend's house and was taken to Knickerbocker Hospital in Manhattan. She waited there for an hour and a half on a stretcher, but they refused to treat her because she was a drug addict. One of the ambulance drivers recognized who she was and brought her to Metropolitan Hospital. At this point in her life, she had cirrhosis of the liver, respiratory problems, and leg ulcers. This didn't stop Anslinger from getting the grand jury to indict her for drug possession while she was in the hospital. They confiscated her personal items, cuffed her to the bed, and stationed police officers outside the door, rarely letting in visitors. They even took a mugshot of her in the hospital bed. The doctors gave her methadone at first to help with the withdrawal symptoms, but suddenly stopped, which basically killed her. Anslinger had accomplished his goal. I wish there was a better ending to this story, but there's not. Anslinger would end up being the head of the Bureau from 1930 until his retirement in 1962, serving under Presidents Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy. And his legacy can be seen in many other criminal policies that we have today. Take some time to watch The United States vs. Billie Holiday on Hulu, and much more importantly, listen to her music. I hope this gives you some more historical context as to what was happening in policy and culture in America in the 1930s through 50s. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel, and let me know what you think in the comments. Bye!